Good to see you, Deepak.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Nigel.
So I was thinking, it's been like 10 years, I think, since we first met at the first Puppet Camp in San Francisco, and just how chuffed we were to just hang out in person with like 20 other people focused on solving IT problems, but using Puppet to do it, and like how far we've come since then.
Yeah, it's awesome that, because usually we're not even in the same country as each other, because we're on the road or we're talking with users, talking with customers, things like that. So it's wonderful not just to be in the same country, but to be in the same city/place at the exact same time.
Things have been pretty busy.
Yeah, absolutely.
What, added 200 people in the last year just to the company?
Yeah.
And then you look at the engineering stuff. Like I was looking back thinking about all the stuff we've added to Puppet over the last couple of years and just how I would have killed for that. Not even just 10 years ago when we started using Puppet, but even like 5 years ago. Puppet's radically different.
Oh, I mean, you remember all of us, I think, at that early time were pushing up against the limits of the system. And the good news is now that we actually work here, we've been able to fix a lot of those things, which is great. So as an example, one example is we've got a completely new compiler. And inside of that, there's all kinds of stuff that I think a ton of people have asked for. There's data types built into the language, better validation. You don't need to learn Ruby and kind of break out of the Puppet experience just to templatize a file or splat a file out on disk with certain content. There's integrated data lookup, and that's not even to mention all of the performance and scalability improvements that we've put in, which are near and dear to my heart.
They're pretty super nice. Yeah. But you left out like Puppet now runs on Windows as a first-class citizen,
True.
which definitely wasn't true 10 years ago. And I think it's crazy like how the whole ecosystem's moved that you can now just go to the Amazon Marketplace, couple of clicks, and just deploy a Puppet installation.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's pretty nice. So, there's been a whole bunch of changes. We've seen the landscape change. We've been focused on config management, IT automation, and it's like heaps of things have gotten better. But it's like there's so much new tech that it's not clear that everything's gotten simpler for everyone.
Right, and I think that's the movie of IT, and we kind of know what that ending, I think, looks like in a lot of ways, which is there's always going to be new technology that allows people to build systems in more interesting ways, and I think we're at this stage now where the number of choices people have, like if you're a systems builder, it's awesome. It's really good times to be in the systems building business, but the reason why it is because you have so many different options, everything from bare metal to virtualized to using a PaaS to cloud infrastructure to containers and whatever is going to come next, like cloud functions or unikernels and things like that. And because this is IT we're talking about, if there's a choice, if there's a technological choice someone could use to build a system, someone's going to use it.
And there's so many choices out there. And part of that is that pretty much everyone in our space, us included, we're like releasing open source software. This is all super accessible for people to get into.
Yeah, so it makes it really easy to adopt all these new things. But I think because of that, I've gotten a lot of interest from users and customers they've expressed this problem, which is because there's so many different ways that people can build systems, and there are people inside their companies actually building systems in a bunch of different ways, they have a really basic problem, which is they don't even know what they've got.
It's a huge problem. And this shift from sort of not just doing automation, but showing people around how to discover what they've actually got so that they can automate it is like why we've released all this stuff lately, why we've released Lumagon, why we've got all these discovery features coming out in Puppet Enterprise.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that makes it challenging for a lot of folks is because it's that heterogeneity. They've got applications deployed, or they've got stuff in their estate that spans like a ton of different kinds of operating systems, different architectures, physical, virtual, whether in the cloud, things like that. But I think the reason why I'm excited about all this stuff is because that's a place where we're really good. We've been, Puppet's always been about heterogeneity. That's where we've thrived. So we've always been able to run on a ton of different platforms, a ton of different architectures. And no matter what kind of system you're talking about, it's been baked into the core Puppet engine for years now, the ability to look at, in a deep way, the system that we're running on and introspect it and actually pull out meaningful info about all the resources that people have on a system. And we don't care whether it's physical, virtual, Windows, Linux, running on cloud, running on-prem. Like, it doesn't matter to us. And that makes it really tractable for us to actually help people solve those kinds of problems. It's what we've been good at for years.
Totally. And those problems have only gotten worse because people are deploying more stuff, more tech stacks, more architectures, more platforms in a bigger variety of ways than they ever did before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not enough to have just a list of IP addresses that comprise your infrastructure, right? Because I think that only answers, that's good, but that only answers a certain small subset of questions that you may need to ask about your infrastructure.
And people aren't even necessarily just behind the firewall these days where they can just scan a subnet. They've got stuff all over the place.
Yeah, so people want to know more in-depth things about the systems that they have to deal with and they have to manage. It's not just enough to know the IP address. You want to know what packages are installed, what user accounts are provisioned on this thing, what services is this thing responsible for, what's up and what's down. Things like that actually help you answer a lot of meaningful security questions or operational questions your development teams have. Just the bread and butter basic stuff that you need to be able to figure out if you're managing a bunch of infrastructure these days.
Totally, and if you're doing it all with containers, we see that the runtime configuration is different because the life cycles aren't the same. You're creating and disposing of containers faster than you were before, but you're creating way more of them, and way more people all the way across your organization are actually doing this.
Yeah, I think another trend I think is that we've seen over the years is that the abstractions are always improving. In IT, if you want to build a system, you can use higher and higher levels of abstraction. But whether that's you go from physical to virtual to cloud and containerization, things like that. But ultimately, it's still a system that you've got to manage. And if it's a system you've got to manage, there are inputs to that system, and you need to understand what those inputs are, how they change over time. You need to be able to report on them, who has access to them. So maybe in the beginning, the inputs to your system would have been a bunch of files on disk, and that's just how you deployed all your stuff and managed your stuff. And then over time, that evolves to be, well, now I care about a version number on a package because I bundled everything up into a package. And then maybe moving on, it becomes, okay, well, now my infra is all deployed inside of AWS, and now the inputs to that system are the architecture of that, your auto-scaling group, and the metadata inside of there. Tomorrow, maybe it's a completely containerized app where all of the inputs to that system are inside of key value pairs stored in some kind of distributed store. But nonetheless, throughout that entire evolution, you still need to care about what's going into the applications that you got to manage. And counterintuitively, I think, as the abstractions have gotten more powerful, the more important it becomes for people to understand what those inputs are and just manage their software more tightly better.
And you talked about powerful abstractions. They're also easier for people to use, which means more people are using them, which means you've got a wider variety of them. And in many ways, because they're more powerful, it's even more important to actually manage what are those key value stores that are essentially managing complex distributed systems. You've still got to discover what's going on, which is why, again, it's so great what we've been doing around Lumagon, all the discovery features that we've been releasing. And I'm kind of really looking forward to us bridging that gap and continuing to charge on down the path of letting people automate everything.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Cheers.
Cheers.